I've been hard at work revamping the graphics, and I'll get to that in the future, but today I wanted to show you some interesting work I've done on the house roofs. The thing is that creating the roof material, the shingles I think they're called, was easy, but the result hardly looks like a house. The roof should look more like this. I've now created a few more tiles. Though it looks more believable, it's a lot of work putting all these together, especially because it's easy to pick the wrong images. Now, considering there'll be lots of houses in the game, this needed to be improved. Some hours of work later, I created a special roof joint mechanic to help in this regard. After defining the edges with the minus shaped title and the vertex with the plus, things will automatically join. Coding wise, it's easy to make a mess with a swamp of conditionals to get this going, or create some complex abstraction with rule sets. When looking at a given cell, be it an edge or a vertex, I read its neighbor's data in a tuple. Then, using a switch statement, I handle whatever cases I needed. To be clear, it's still a lot of work, but it allows me to make changes with a higher degree of confidence that I won't be breaking anything. This was the most simple roof of all, so we're limited to just rectangles. To handle some other shapes, further work was required. Basically, I had to create some new tiles and add more conditions to the previous switch statement. After building this house, I will show you what I've done. So the center is here. Now I'm going to extend it to the bottom by placing some scaffold points around the edges. There is an exception, and that's the right edge, which needs to go away. So I'm going to overwrite it. Then I'll fill the rest of the spaces and let the code adjust the edges by itself. It actually begins to look like a house, doesn't it? Next, I made sprites for the margins. I can place them manually, but it can be a bit tedious, so I made a button named Add Margins to help with this. It certainly looks better, but there's still some work to be done. To give the roof some depth, I wanted to make the upper areas brighter and bottom areas darker. In order to achieve this, I would need to store the height information onto the tile. Thus, this is what we have now. 0 means no height information, 1 is the tallest and 5 is the lowest. So I could just fill in the values by hand, but to make my life easier, I created an autofill option that when set on the tallest point, it will update every reachable value for me. After some work, I have created a height map, so let's try things out. Basically, populating the heights will make things lighter or darker. But maybe there's more I could do. If you look at houses in real life, you'll notice that different faces of a house receive different amount of shading based on the sun's position. So maybe I could replicate this somehow. I spent some time adding the ability to provide the light direction. So by setting these arrows, I can specify how lit each face should be. So for example, the north should hardly receive light. The edges are a bit more complex. So the square just means that in those places, I should interpolate the neighbor's color. This entire process is time consuming, so like with the previous height map I wrote, the autofill will find similar cells and populate them with the same orientation. Behind the scenes, this is using the same system as the previous height map, so fortunately it wasn't as time consuming as it looks. Things look quite a bit better, but you can still see the jagged edges in a stairway pattern. However, reading more neighbor texture samples in the shader made this way smoother. Looking at it now, it actually feels 3D somehow. With this out of the way, I made some adjustments around the margins and decided to stop here. After all, roofs aren't that important to begin with, but I just couldn't let it the way it was initially. So this is it for now. If you have enjoyed this video, please click the like button and I'll catch you in the next devlog.